We have with us Mr. Shailendra Trivedi, Chief General Manager, Department of Information Technology, RBI. Shri Sanjiv Bikhchandani. Chakji. Bikhchandani. Shri Sridhar Vembu, he is founder and former CEO of Zoho Corporation. He is joining us from Trivedi. He is joining us online. Sriram Balasubramanian, he is joining us from DC, Washington DC. He is consulting senior economist at the World Bank Group. And moderator of the session is Kunal Walia, his partner and lead digital global practice at Dalberg Advisors. Kunal, mic is yours. I think there is some issue with Sridhar Vembuji. He'll be joining us soon, but we already have Sriram from Washington.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Kunal Walia. I'm a partner with Dalberg, and I lead Dalberg's digital and data practice globally. We're taking a little bit of a pivot in terms of topics here. We're talking about digital infrastructure now, and the theme here is Deepening Digital Connect, where we're really trying to answer the question of what does this India, Middle East, Europe corridor mean to drive, as in terms of the potential to drive digital transformation in the countries that are involved over here. Now, what does digital transformation mean? At Dalberg, we've looked at various definitions, frameworks for digital transformation. It's a sum of a few things that need to come together, and it's relevant to each country that's looking at its digital journey. Number one, it's really important to have digital connectivity, where you can connect and give access, low internet access, low-cost internet access to a lot of your consumers. It's about providing population-scale digital services. It's about policy, regulation, and it's about human capital that can actually build the digital transformation, as well as startups involved in it. And finally, a point that's often missed, it's about providing safe internet, safe services, so cybersecurity. And across all of these areas, it's really essential that countries cooperate with each other, and IMEC actually provides a really useful framework for that to happen. I have a very stellar set of panelists to talk about this. Very briefly, I just want to introduce them. I have Mr. Shailendra Trivedi, who's the Chief General Manager, Department of Information Technology, RBI. Sitting on my right, I have Sanjiv Bikhchandani, who you all would know, founder and executive vice chairman of InfoEdge, one of the leading online platforms, multiple platforms in the country. And I am joined by Dr. Sriram Balasubramanian, from a consulting senior economist from the World Bank. And I think we'll shortly be joined by Sridhar Vembu, founder and former CEO of Zoho Corporation, one of India's largest SaaS platforms. So it's a really good mix of one of the largest development bank, regulator, and two really large private sector organizations in the tech space. The timer is showing me that we have only 21 minutes left, and so I will jump in straight with the questions. And I'd like to start with a question to all three panelists over here. And maybe, Shailendra, we'll start with you. And the question is, what are some of the opportunities where tech can actually enhance collaboration within the IMEC corridor? And what can India offer? What does India have to offer over here?
Thank you, Kunal, and it's an honor for me to be here. on this interesting topic. But I must clarify that all what I say may not represent the RBI's views. Some of them may be purely my views.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So see, I would prefer on what we have and probably what we can offer to others as learnings or something which others can emulate. So whenever we talk of our infrastructure, what we generally talk is about UPI. But most of the people on this panel will be aware that that's not actually the first thing which we did. The first thing that we did was the National Financial Switch, which is a unique kind of a setup that only we have, I think. It is the switch which connected all the ATMs in the country, and in the first phase made ATM withdrawals easy for the public. Then came UPI, obviously is there. In addition, we operate systems like RTGS and NEFT on a round-the-clock basis, which again, no one else in the world has 24/7 payment systems like we do have. Secondly, people whom I interact with sometimes also on international forums, they do realize that considering the scale that we operate on, anything that works in India is likely to work anywhere else in the world, because an RTGS remains an RTGS whether we do it or somebody else does it. The fast payments like UPI are being followed or getting introduced almost in all the countries. More than that, what we have shown by these kind of initiatives is, especially UPI, that the public-private partnership actually works. So a government body like the RBI or the NPCI for that matter sets up the standards and leaves the field for the entrepreneurs and the market to innovate on top of that, to help the system gain scale, penetration, those kind of things. Second, this we have also shown that open architecture and interoperability, if we have both of these things, then the scale becomes easy to achieve. And in that sense, the open architecture and interoperability cannot be unique to being within the country only. It can also extend across the border once we have transparent open standards and our systems and the systems on the other side are transparent, architecture-wise, are interoperable. The scale need not be confined to India alone. It can be the entire corridor or for the world for that matter. So that's my initial thought.
No, thank you so much for that. I think what's interesting in what you just said is if I'm just pulling out the learnings, is that lot to learn from the DPI experience in India. And DPI is not just about creating your sovereign infrastructure, but using interoperability, it can actually be applied across different regions and create a lot of collaboration. Sanjiv, coming to you, if you'd like to add to that, and I think the audience would love to also just hear from you in terms of what Indian startups have to offer in all of this.
So I think, look, DPI is a big deal, digital public infrastructure. What India has achieved when, sort of the journey began, I don't think anybody fully comprehended, what could happen or what might happen or what was going to unfold over the next 10, 15, 20 years since we began this journey. And what has emerged is that our DPI is essentially a lubricant for the economy. It has increased the velocity. It has made things so much easier and faster. I'm willing to bet that if we had not implemented this DPI, when we did and the way we did, maybe economic growth will be 1 or 2% slower than it is. Because velocity has come from this, it's a lubricant in the economy. And I think when I get foreign visitors, international guests, they are absolutely amazed with the kind of DPI that we have and the kind of payments that we can make. And the fact that, there are QR codes everywhere and you can do micropayments to every small vendor. And money moves from bank account to bank account. So Jan Dhan account, Aadhaar, PAN, UPI, all of these things talking to each other is really quite remarkable. And there are many, many countries who would like to implement in their country if they could. And while China has got good digital payment infrastructure, most people don't trust China the way they trust India. And therefore, this is actually something India can contribute to the world. make stuff better, and it'll be a big part of our soft power globally. So I think this is a strategic resource. It's a strategic piece of infrastructure we built, and we should leverage it as a nation. And a lot of this will be government to government, right? Where, and that is where the government must do stuff. I think the other thing is that the Indian startup ecosystem is I think, second or third largest in the world. And a lot of countries are looking at the Indian startup ecosystem and saying, can we do something like this? And they're trying, but India can help them do it so much better because we've done it so much better ourselves. Right? The third thing India can contribute is our engineers. We've got such a large talent pool. Very many other countries don't have such a large talent pool. And if they're looking for talent, then India can supply it. And if they're looking to create their own talent over, let's say, the next decade or two, India's got 4,000 engineering colleges. We know how to run engineering colleges at scale. That's one thing we can contribute and help people build engineering colleges in their countries. These are 3 or 4 things I think we can contribute, and we should. And this will require, one, direct intervention from the government in some cases. It will require perhaps enabling policies in other cases, and participation of private sector after that.
No, thanks for that. I think the DPI opportunity or learning from the India startup experience or leveraging the skilling ecosystem that we have, I think you very briefly touched upon it in the end, is what kind of leadership is required. And I'll come back to you, hopefully, if we get a bit of time for you to expand on that. But Dr. Subramaniam, I just want to come to you with the same question. What is the digital transformation opportunity over here with this platform? But also, can you say a little bit more about the work of the World Bank in sort of promoting digital transformation in different countries? Any examples that you can share?
Thank you. Thanks, Kunal and Dr. Trivedi for inviting me for this program. The usual caveat that these are my personal views. I'd like to share a couple of thoughts. I think it would be useful to sort of look at some of the constraints that some of these countries have, to find solutions, right? Some of the smaller countries, in terms of the major constraints are in capital, digital public infrastructure, as you mentioned, and also the broader financial inclusion sphere of having an ID, having people as part of the digital ecosystem. I think these constraints can be enabled or can be dealt with a lot of support from the IMAC initiative, because you have countries like India who have proven digital public infrastructure at scale, as some of your colleagues have mentioned, and that could be a good prototype for a lot of the smaller countries within the IMAC, and the ability to move capital as well. Because a lot of the public infrastructure lacks capital mobility, the digital public infrastructure, both in the private sector as well as the public sector. And I think this forum could enable a platform where a lot of the larger countries could provide a sort of a capital mobility within this forum for a lot of the digital players. And lastly, I think also the digital currencies that we're talking about, the mobility, the ability to experiment in such a forum for countries that want to use digital currencies. How do you go through the process? What are some of the layers in the DPI infrastructure that countries can use? I think these are knowledge transfers in some form, where some established countries within the IMAC have a certain expertise, which the smaller countries can leverage. I think multilateral institutions provide a lot of standard prototypes. The digital ID units within, for example, the World Bank itself provide a very good platform for policymakers within the IMAC to look at, where the provision of a digital ID and how do you scale it up with a larger population, and how do you include that in the broader financial inclusion ecosystem. And then as an extension, how do you mobilize, say, a digital currency as well? So for example, countries like India could use this platform to internationalize the rupee more. Similarly for other countries within the platform as well. So I think it provides a lot of opportunities for the stakeholders and for the broader ecosystem to support and enable countries, both the smaller countries and the bigger countries, to enhance digital financial inclusion and also develop the digital public infrastructure.
Thanks for that. I'll come back to you, Shailendra, with a question on, I mean, I think all the panelists have now spoken about the potential of digital payments, interoperable digital payments. And in your role in RBI, I'm sure you've also looked at the risk that comes along with it, the increasing number of digital frauds, cyber frauds. And is there some scope for cooperation using the IMEC platform to mitigate the threats, to share more intelligence? Can you share your expertise on that?
Yeah, indeed, as the number of transactions increases, the complications in the digital world also multiply. But there is always a scope for cooperation among institutions within the countries or groupings of countries on many of these aspects. The biggest or the most low-hanging kind of a thing would be how you cooperate with each other in matters of cybersecurity, for instance. How do you share information, and how do you agree to punish or bring to account the perpetrators who are across the borders? Maybe in certain cases you are able to find out from where they are coming. In most of the cases you may not even be able to find out from where they are coming. But this kind of a scope is there. In addition to this, in fact, there is also a possibility of cooperating on several other areas, like we have our DPDP, how it connects to the GDPR of EU. There are some other standards which ideally should be complementing each other and support each other. So cybersecurity is one, data privacy and data protection is the second part, and the third, which more important you said, is about frauds. Like I said, because the number of transactions happening in our country are very high, obviously the number of, not maybe in percentage terms, but in terms of the frauds that are there, will be proportionate to the number of transactions that happen. So we will have learnings from what is happening negative in our payment systems. I mean the frauds what are happening here. It gives you a basis to identify such kind of transactions or such kind of fraudulent transactions that happen, and that can be an easy learning for anyone. Like they can learn from our experience of DPI, like UPI, CoWIN, Umang, National Financial Switch. It is also a learning. At the same time, sometimes the other side, other countries may be doing some research which may help us in further fine-tuning things like fraud prevention, detection in our sphere, things like quantum-proof cybersecurity. So there is a tremendous scope for cooperation in many of these. Some of these may be very low-hanging things, can be easily done. Some of them may require efforts, the governance systems among countries, some frameworks to be established among countries to achieve, but can be achieved.
That's very, very insightful, both in terms of the technological experience, but also policy. So thank you for sharing that. And Sanjiv, coming back to you, the conversation about digital infrastructure transformation cannot be complete about talking about without talking about AI. And I just wanted to get your view on where does AI fit into all of this in terms of cooperation. And also you touched upon visionary leadership needed from policymakers. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are very few countries that have developed large language models, right? It's mostly in the US, whether it's, and mostly in the private sector in the US, and then there's China. Almost nowhere else is there any large language model. I do believe there are efforts on in India, and I believe some of them will fructify in the next few months, maybe a couple of years. And if we do build one or two or three large language models, I think that will be a unique asset we will have. Naturally, a lot of people in India and overseas are building apps based on large language models. We ourselves are invested in several companies that are doing that. We ourselves are doing that inside our company. But to build an LLM is more challenging. and the MeitY is running a contest right now. I think there have been 57 entries, and that's very heartening. And they'll see who to back. But I think in the next couple of years, we should see something emerging from India. And if that happens, I think it will be a quantum shift in our capabilities as a nation. And that is something we can bring to the table. Building apps on top of existing LLMs, of course, is a lot easier. And India is doing a lot of it, but that is not something that is so unique. Okay? But अगर large language model बन गया, दो चार, I think बहुत फर्क पड़ेगा हमें.
Thank you for that. And coming back to Dr. Subramanian, just if you can just put this all in context in sort of the changing, the geopolitical environment and funding being constrained. We're talking about digital infrastructure over here. We're talking about IMEC as a platform that allows for a lot of cooperation and provides a lot of markets for private sector companies. But what is the role or changing role of development banks globally to sort of fund digital infrastructure, and how does IMEC actually provide that opportunity?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, because not in a silo. We are in a geopolitical environment which is very much in a transient phase. So I think as we see more and more fragmentation of both resources and alliances and networks, I think the IMEC in that sense provides a very good unifying platform for a variety of countries. And across board, not just in Asia and in other continents as well, and the broader market that it provides is a significant market. So I think in terms of both capital mobility and also having a common platform, a common agenda for progress, sustainable progress, I think that's a very unique dispensation in a very fragmented world. So I think the value of an inclusive, sustainable, and a progressive sort of union becomes a higher premium in a fragmented world. So I think that's a very subtle but very important point that policymakers need to be cognizant about. And I think in that sense, having a common platform, common interest among these countries enables us to have common standards and also have greater capital mobility within, say, both the private sector as well as the public sector as well, contributing to this effort as part of this initiative. So I think there's a lot of scope, to enable this, and also it also reflects the broader, geopolitical environment in the region, and brings more peace and stability, and shifts the focus more to commerce and expanding the economic pie as you might, attribute. So I think in that context, I think the entire IMEC initiative provides a good forum for greater access to capital, for better common goods within this forum, and also greater private sector participation, especially in the DPI space. And I think, while the geopolitical environment in general is challenging, I think this provides a good avenue for countries and policymakers to invest their resources in.
No, thanks for that. We have less than 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask one last question to the panelists, very, very quick answers. Imagine we're here on the stage 1 year down the line. We've already had a few MOUs signed under this platform between countries for cooperation. From a digital infrastructure, digital transformation point of view, 1 year down the line, what would success look like to you? What are the 1 or 2 things that you would really like to see? Anybody want to start?
I'd like to see some collaboration on digital public infrastructure with stuff actually beginning to happen on the ground, maybe in 1 or 2 or 3 countries. I think that's one big thing for success. Maybe some more MOUs and more action on the ground in some of the other areas. But I think digital public infrastructure is the first step and the foundation.
Great.
Yeah, I would like to see some of our initiatives like UPI or the payment systems getting expanded to more countries because they are already there in certain countries. We would like them to be there in more countries in the next year.
Yeah, just to add to what both Sanjiv and your other panelists mentioned, I think there needs to be a common consensus among the constituents to enable DPI and sort of have common standards over the next year. I think if some sort of an understanding comes towards that and enabling this in some of these countries, that would be a significant achievement.
Well, thank you to the panelists. If I can summarize, it seems like all of you have spoken about DPI as a big opportunity without being prompted, but there's things that need to come into place for that to happen. It's about skilling, it's about coordinating with startups, it's about policymakers coordinating, developing frameworks, and like you said, so the thinking about risks is also extremely important, and a visionary policy making behind all of that. So with that, can I have a round of applause for the panelists for these insightful discussions? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kunal. Thank you very much. May I request Professor Sachin Chaturvedi to come forward and help us in thanking the gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you, Sriram ji. Now you can safely sleep. Thank you. Mr. Sanjiv Bikhchandani, ladies and gentlemen, his country's topmost venture capitalist and fund, Kunal Walia, and Trivedi from RBI.